From the heart of America, where hard work, freedom, and faith still define who we are. From the farms to the factories, from small towns to city streets, this is the fight for the soul of our nation.
We're watching Democrats attack democracy. Do not be fooled.
The strength, the grit, the greatness of the American spirit, all right here.
The left wanted power, not peace, but there's a resistance rising. A generation saying enough, enough. We've tried it their way, and it failed.
The Steve Gruber Show with your host, Steve Gruber, starts right now.
All right, let's get rolling right into a brand new day here on the program. Glad to have you on board. Fighting for you from the foxhole of freedom. Who do you want shoulder to shoulder with you when things hit the fan? Man, you got to know. We're putting America first every single day. Let's get rolling here. Three big things for this hour. Number one, Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz says he's packing up and getting out of the state of Washington, moving his corporate headquarters to Miami. Another blue state fumble of a big prize. Number two, the FBI is warning that Iran has been looking at trying to launch drone attacks against California. That would certainly be a game changer, but not in the way they might think. And number three, I want to talk about the tale of two Americas today. One rooted in an ideology that churns out disaster, and one rooted in reality that turns out results. Reality's stubborn. It doesn't care about slogans or theories or bumper stickers. Reality is the world as it actually exists, the threats we face, the energy we need, the priorities that keep a society functioning. Ideology, on the other hand, is what happens when political movements become so convinced of their worldview that they stop paying attention to the world around them. And if you want to see that divide playing out in real time, you don't have to look too far. Just take three stories that surfaced in the same week. The first comes out of New York, where authorities say two teenagers were arrested in connection with an ISIS-inspired attack plot. Teenagers, radicalized online by ISIS propaganda, threw two homemade bombs into a crowd of anti-Muslim protesters shouting Allah Akbar, Allahu Akbar, as they did. They told police officers that it was their religion, Islam, that made them do it. Yet the mainstream media still refuses to embrace the reality that this has anything to do with Islam. Here's an example.
Is there a line anywhere right now on Capitol Hill or elsewhere in the Republican movement when it comes to anti-Muslim?
I can't speak for Mike Johnson, but I would say we've had two terrorist attacks here in the last 10 days.
What does that have to do with Muslims?
So can we condemn those? Why are we?
Of course. What does that have to do with Muslims?
What does that have to do with Muslims?
There is a radical strain of Islam that's led to these terrorist attacks.
Obviously,
the vast majority of Muslims are
people
peaceful.
with terroristic ideologies here and all around the world. What does that have to do with whether Muslims belong in American society as a group?
Good Lord. And later on CNN, Ana Navarro did the exact same thing, deflecting from the real reason for the attack. Here's another example.
Ironic is, so supposedly some of these comments are as a result of the attempt against Mayor Mamdani in New York, who was raised Muslim, was he not, himself? Yeah. So they're being anti-Muslim and they're finally defending Mamdani over something.
To be clear, the attack wasn't on Mayor Mamdani. It was on people protesting. It was attacking protesters, people protesting Mamdani.
Right by his house.
To frame it as an anti-Muslim attack would actually completely reverse what happened. Someone who shouted Allah Akbar threw a bomb that didn't go off at the protesters.
Republicans are finally doing something.
There it is. The left is blind. They equivocate. Oh, it was near Mayor Mamdani's house. So it was an attack on him. No, it wasn't. Like I said, the left is blind, even when it's staring them straight in the face when it's inconvenient for them. These teenagers embrace the ideology of a foreign terror group that the United States has spent decades trying to defeat. Think about that for a moment. For more than 20 years, Americans have watched their country fight Islamic extremism overseas. We fought wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. We built intelligence networks. We passed security laws. We were told the goal was simple. Keep that ideology from reaching American streets. And yet here we are in 2026 with teenagers in New York City allegedly drawn into the same radical worldview that produced attacks across Europe and the Middle East. The reality is clear. It's uncomfortable. It's dangerous. And it requires clear-eyed leadership willing to acknowledge what's actually happening. But reality often seems like an inconvenience for Democrats. Because while the real world presents us with serious challenges, security threats, geopolitical instability, economic competition, a huge amount of political energy is spent debating ideas that exist almost entirely in the realm of ideology, not in reality. Which brings us to the second story, this one from Minnesota. Lawmakers there are considering a proposal that would grant legal rights to wild rice. I can't even make that up. Yes, wild rice, a plant. The proposal would effectively allow the plant to have something like legal standing, a right to exist, potentially enforceable in court. Like I said, I can't make this up. Listen.
First, this bill applies the legal inherent rights doctrine to a plant that has been in Minnesota since long before there was a Minnesota. That doctrine does not grant any right to wild rice. Rather, it recognizes that the plant's inherent right to live exists because it is alive.
Its inherent right to exist. You've got to be kidding me. In a court of law. The symbolism here is hard to ignore, especially when you remember something else the Minnesota legislature did just a couple of years ago. In 2023, that same legislature passed sweeping laws legalizing abortion up to the point of birth, removing nearly all limits on late-term abortion in the state. No right to exist there, apparently. Minnesota Democrats refused to listen to reality when confronted with it during debate by Republican State Representative Ann New Brindley. Here's what she said.
Frankly, right now, the underlying bill language allows for abortion for any reason, via any method, at any point in pregnancy. It is the most extreme position on abortion in the entire world. Literally on the world stage with just 7 other countries. But certainly by the 3rd trimester, we do know that babies in utero can feel excruciating pain in the 3rd trimester. But there has to be a point at which some humanity kicks in for us. There has to be a point at which we can all look around and say, this is particularly disturbing. And I would just make a point that, if you did these things to a baby, just a week later, a day later, if that baby was outside of the womb and you did these things, again, a day later, not only would you be charged with murder, but that would be aggravated.
Minnesota Democrats and many across the country heard this and so much more and still chose to strip away a baby's right to life, to exist. So think about the contrast. In the span of just a couple of years, lawmakers there went from eliminating protections for human life late in pregnancy to debating whether a plant should have legal rights to exist. You can't make this up. It's not just a policy debate. It's a snapshot of ideological thinking taken to its illogical conclusion. When politics become driven entirely by theory, symbolism, and moral signaling, priorities start to invert. The boundaries between serious governance and abstract activism are completely blurred. It's a strange world, isn't it? Just to see that, to review that, and I've got more coming. Ideology or reality? The discussion continues on the Steve Gruber Show in just a moment. All right, glad to have you up with us here today. Look, when reality hits ideology and they run into each other, reality has a way of reminding us what actually matters. Reality reminds us that threats still exist, that extreme ideologies still recruit followers, that societies still depend on the hard, unglamorous infrastructure that makes modern life possible. Which brings me to a third story today, one that comes from a very different part of the country, in Texas. A major oil refinery opening its doors in a landmark $300 billion deal, all right? Here's Interior Secretary Doug Burgum with the latest.
Well, this is something that would have never happened under the Obama or Biden administrations, who are essentially anti-hydrocarbons. President Trump, with his energy dominance, which means energy abundance, which means have energy to sell to our friends and allies, and have enough of that it helps get prices down for American consumers. But this refinery announcement, it's a win. It's a win for American workers. It's a win for American consumers. It's a win for America, and it's a win for American shale producers, because this refinery, $300 billion project, is going to be tuned to handle those sweet light crudes that come from the Permian, come from the Bakken, and it's going to produce, it's going to be handling enormous amounts of throughput, and it's going to be able to put gas, diesel, jet fuel on the U.S. markets and help lower the prices. More competition in refining is great. We got lots of oil, having more competition here. So again, President Trump's energy dominance agenda in action, because all of this happened, the permitting and moving this project forward has happened in the time frame since he became president. Yeah. He's working at Trump speed to make sure we've got the infrastructure, again, for peace abroad, prosperity at home.
First time in 50 years. Congratulations to Brownsville, Texas, for having that project on its doorstep. Now, for the activists and bureaucrats who dominate so many political debates, that might sound like a relic from the past. For years, we've been told that fossil fuels are on the verge of disappearing. We're all out. That we're just one policy initiative away from a fully renewable economy powered entirely by wind turbines, solar panels, and just nonsense. Rainbows and butterflies. But reality keeps interrupting that narrative. And the states that ignore it pay the price. Here's Energy Secretary Chris Wright laying it out.
Live in red states. I'm from Texas. I see gas at like $2.50 when I'm back home. And then you hear from some people that are in California and they say the gas is skyrocketing. Can you explain the policies that are driving that? Even though the administration is drill, get the regulations down, it seems like some of these blue states aren't feeling the relief.
They aren't. But of course, the Trump administration, we want to help every state. But it is political choices that leaders make that make energy expensive. Like one of the reasons I'm here in New York, the New England states have crazy high electricity price for one reason. They blocked a natural gas pipeline that would go from Pennsylvania through New York State and lower everyone's electricity prices and allow job creation in New England. But the politics of, sort of a climate cult was we can't have any more hydrocarbons. We can't have any more hydrocarbons. They stand in the way of stuff and just make it more expensive.
The climate cult, so right. The reality is that global energy demand continues to rise. Reality is that modern economies, from agriculture to transportation to manufacturing, still depend on oil and natural gas. Reality is that when countries restrict domestic energy production, they don't eliminate demand. In fact, it's growing, as we all know. They simply shift power to other producers around the world and become beholden to them. Refineries are not abstract political symbols. They are industrial engines. They take crude oil and turn it into gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, kerosene, all of it. The energy that moves trucks across highways, powers airplanes in the sky, and keeps supply chains running smoothly. Without refineries, the modern economy doesn't run at all. And while large parts of the political establishment debate ideological questions, the language of identity, the legal standing of plants, the latest theories about society, there are still Americans focused on something much more simple: building things, designing infrastructure, producing energy, doing the work that keeps this country humming along. That's what's happening in Texas. It's a reminder that beneath the noise of ideological politics, there's still an America grounded in reality. An America that recognizes the difference between symbolism and substance. An America that understands that prosperity and security ultimately depend on tangible things: energy, industry, infrastructure, all important. Look at these three things together, and you can clearly see the divide. In New York, the reality of global extremism shows up in a disturbing way. In Minnesota, ideology pushes politics into strange and symbolic territory. And in Texas, reality wins. Through the work of building and producing the resources our country still depends on. 3 stories, 1 lesson. Reality will eventually win every argument. You can't ignore threats, but they don't disappear if you do. You can try to regulate away industries, but the world still needs what those industries produce. You can pass laws that redefine priorities, but people will still notice when the contradictions become too obvious to ignore. The question for America is whether reality will reassert itself It always does. The question is whether voters will continue to recognize it and start voting accordingly before left-wing ideology destroys whatever's left. And that's the monologue. If you're tired of juggling powders, pills, and capsules, I understand. Longevity Wellness simplifies your routine with an all-in-one nutritional shake that supports joints, brain health, digestion, and immune function too. It tastes great. It's easy to use, and it's built for real life. Made with great ingredients, and we use it in this house every single day. All you need to do to find out more, go to longevitywellness.co. Use the promo code Gruber for an exclusive listener discount. Longevitywellness.co, promo code Gruber. If you become a subscriber, you'll get an even better deal. Cool, right? All right, after the break, a preview of the next edition of Forgotten America, the podcast that Ivy and I launched here a few weeks ago. If you haven't been listening, it's an easy thing to do. Just go to YouTube, become a subscriber, and get the next episode of Forgotten America, a preview of what's wrong with education in America. What is wrong with education in America? We're going to go right to the rotting root of the problem after this.